Here we are back again with the third episode. It's getting close to record numbers, and I'm going to get straight on with crafting a load of stone pickaxes, putting half of them in our storage because I didn't want them clogging up inventory space, becoming counterproductive to what I want to get done, which I'll get to soon. However, as always, when I hear a visiting wandering trader, I go to look at all the things I can't buy. However, didn't kill him this time. This must be what people mean when they say character development. I don't know if I've shown this, but there's a giant hole down to a ledge which drops down to a larger Death of Fernin drop that, luckily for me, is right on my doorstep. Always handy in a hardcore world. Anyway, the purpose of this episode is to sort out the staircase to the bottom of the world. Sounds quick, easy, and slightly boring. I can assure you it's going to be none of the above. Well, boring I can't speak for. Just as beauty is in the eye of the beholder, it's the same for boredom. You can make up your mind later on, but only later on. Let me know by liking the video. Since the caves and cliff update, where the world height and depth were increased, having a single block wide staircase to the bottom of the world is a mission in itself. Having a 7 block wide staircase, as I plan to have, with ample headroom might I have, flat walkway sections and a starting point at the top of the mountain, I felt like we'd need to call Tom Cruise in for this one. Even with having a major head start thanks to the work we'd sporadically done over the previous 2 episodes, I was expecting to be here for the long haul, and seeing as I planned to be putting in a big mining session within the next couple of episodes, this needed to be done. It wasn't too bad, it was just a case of removing one block, then removing another, then another, then another, and so forth. You get it, it's the most obvious of pictures, yet a simplistic approach such as this one really reduces the daunting prospect of what needed to get done. Minecraft mindfulness, they call that. A great opportunity to really observe how fucking long a stone pickaxe takes to break a single block of deep slate, and we'd have thousands to remove. Not a complaint, simply an observation. I'd double backed on myself back up to the first half of the staircase where it was primarily stone. I thought I'd break the excavation into sections and remove all of the blocks. The quicker to break blocks first, it'd be a mini victory I could take through to the deep slate section as the motivation to propel me forward. Not that motivation had anything to do with it, and I feel like I'm portraying myself to be hating the project, when in reality it was the opposite. I was loving it, and I want to make that clear. Though it didn't take long for that plan to go out of the window, and a new bright idea to take its place, which as far as bright ideas go, I can't say it's my most luminescent. In fact, it might have been bordering on high voltage levels of insanity. The ancient city we'd discovered back in episode 1 was a highly dangerous place, but with the power of sneak in and wall placing, I knew it could be beat. If I didn't mess up and set off the warden's alarm clocks, he must have been a heavy sleeper because there were a lot of them. All I can say, lesson learned. I still had 3 more chances. Okay, 2 more chances, and all I'd done is place a torch without having taken a single step from where I'd set off the first. And the chances of setting off more were high. These places were littered with shriekers. Demonstrated here for you for the educational purpose of this video. After the darkness effect had died down, I went back and quarantined the shrieker, and placed the torch in victory, only to set off another. Spawning in the warden, and I didn't hang around long enough to get a look at him when I knew he'd burrowed up through the earth next to me. I waited by the entrance to the city, anxiously hoping the beast didn't wander over to me. Fortunately, the leaving sound is as distinctive as their appearance sound, so I knew exactly when the coast was clear. However, when you're only one wrong move away from spawning in another, the coast is never really clear. Something I managed to do simply going from crouching to standing. Another lesson in the books. And from the safety of a mile away, I saw the warden for the first time. I'd hoped it'd be the last time too. Opting to take the outskirts of the city, I found my first chest, guarded by not 1 but 2 shriekers. Before opening the chest, paranoid there was another close by, I had a quick look around, before biting the bullet and opening the chest. Glowberries, books, echo shards and disc fragments. That's a good start. Seeing as I opened the chest, I thought it'd be more than fine to place a torch, but apparently not. Rather than wait by the entrance, I went exploring another part of the city far enough away from the creature he was unlikely to find me. Admittedly though, every torch placement made my heart skip a beat from fear of another one spawning in. 1 was bad enough, anything on top of that was an abomination. And so most of the time I snuck around in the darkness, not wanting a torch placement to potentially summon the end of my world. Although at another chest, after fleecing up the nearby shrieker, I did use a torch as a test to see if I'd be able to open up the chest. And I could, so I did, and most notably found the 13 music disc, separate disc fragments and a name tag. I took the chest too so I wouldn't get baited by it later. I will say a big W for Mojang for including wool in the ancient cities, because I was already down to 13 from 50 of the wool I'd brought, and I'd explored a tiny corner of the place. Even if sneaking made the city feel massive, the place genuinely was massive. Because it was dark, I couldn't get a proper sense for how big it was until I explored more of it, where I'd walked past what I thought was the end, and heck, suddenly there's an entirely new section of the city that had been hidden from view. Now when it came to wall placing, I was sort of learning it on the fly, never having actually explored a city with the block, and so so would sometimes place one over a shrieker thinking I'd successfully isolated it, not realising the scope sensor's signal could still pass through the other blocks such as scope blocks, still reaching the shrieker, and so I'd set one off without realising it, or realising how. I didn't figure it out until about an hour in, and here I am in a super flat creative world to demonstrate what I mean so you can probably understand my lack of knowledge. Obviously when you have a sensor and a nearby shrieker, any sound detected will send a signal over to the shrieker sounding it into action. A piece of wall will be able to block the signal, and when surrounded, sensor signals will be unable to get through. Perfect, what we want. The problem I was having was that there'd often be a scope block next to a shrieker, and if said block was on the same side as where a nearby sensor was located, a signal would still be able to pass through the scope block to the shrieker, setting it off. And I didn't know this, although it's obvious now that I think about it. At the time I was clueless, so half of the instances a shrieker went off was for this reason, and my confused self went wandering back over after the warden had despawned in search of other shriekers that weren't there, thinking there must have been more when in reality I hadn't actually isolated the shrieker properly. While I praised Mojang for including wool in the city's design, I can't say they weren't sneaky with the placement of the shriekers, some of them being in obscure places with what we all knew were devious intentions behind them being there. Still, I was pretty good at ensuring I had an escape route for wherever I went within the city in case bolting it out of there was necessary. I'd also gotten used to exploring the place in the dark, with only the dim lights from the blue lanterns being our only source of visibility. I don't know what it is about ancient cities and lava, but they seem to go together like bread and butter. If you had a city, you were more than likely to find lava. Just another danger to contend with if you found yourself needing to run through the darkness. Chest number 3 had some unbreaking 3 diamond leggings. I said yes please to, and they were like, please wear me. And I was like, yeah sure if you insist. And even though I'm in the darkness, you will appreciate how good they looked on me. Almost as good as these diamonds in the floor looked, which were going to look a lot better in my pocket. I've got to say, the city's a pretty good place to find them lying around. Not much further on, I found a trapdoor contraption I felt not only led to a hidden area, but was put in to trigger a warden spawn if a shrieker was nearby. As well as these note blocks. Mojang, you're more sadistic than I thought. As predicted, the trapdoor led to a hidden area with a chest inside. Filled with snowballs I figured were for distracting a blind basilisk. Not what I wanted, I had more than enough of them in the house. What I wanted were more wall blocks. However, by this point my inventory was full, so looting was now off the cards. It meant a quick trip home to dump what I'd gotten at the city. Before heading back, and after all that time underground, I think I understand what people mean when they say snow blindness. I wanted to claw my eyeballs out of their sockets. Oh yeah, this is better. It's hard to see, but to get an idea for the scale of the place, here's a good look at the city from a good vantage point I'd found, although I'm sure most of you have explored one of these places. The vantage point didn't last for long. A warden spawning up there next to me, and so it meant I had to take a leap of faith to defy death. I managed to get away, but it'd only taken me getting caught once for it to all be over. A bridge we'd cross at a later date. For now, I was enjoying living life on the edge. Some of you in the comments have joked that 2 more episodes and we've set a new series record for a hardcore world, and I'm putting that at risk in front of your eyes. Having successfully explored the city, here's one of the 2 chests of loot. As you can see, there's a lot of good stuff. Diamond leggings, enchanted diamond hose, diamond horse armor, the ward armor trim, enchanted golden apples, music discs, disc fragments, skeleton skulls, echo shards, and minerals and ores. One of the leggings had Unbreaking 3 and Mending on it. Massive find right there. In fact, I hadn't shown it, but I'd already switched out of our Unbreaking 3 leggings we'd found earlier with a better protection 4 Unbreaking 3 pair instead. Over in loot chest number 2, we had a load more stuff. Enchanted books, notably Swift Sneak 3, Looting 3, Luckless C 3, and Loyalty 3. We also had a lectern, books, name tags, glowberries, soul sand, and blue lanterns, and a few other things you can see on the screen. With the music disc fragments, I was able to make a full disc I couldn't listen to because I didn't have a jukebox. I probably could have made one if I wanted. What I did make was our first diamond pickaxe of the world. Then went down to the ruin portal I'd found last episode by the shoreline and took a few of the obsidian blocks, and made for ourselves an enchanting table. It went upstairs. Because of all the books we'd found in the ancient city, we had more than enough to craft enough bookshelves to get the highest level enchants the table had to offer. So I crafted a diamond helmet, a diamond chestplate, and diamond boots, and made a grindstone in case the enchants sucked and needed removing, but was confused to find level 16 enchants and not the level 30 ones I'd expected, and I knew I should be getting because there were more than enough bookshelves. So what I did was move the enchanting table forward 1 block so there was a gap of space between all the bookshelves, and that seemed to fix the issue. However, I'd not left much space for standing and walking, so I filled in the empty space in between the walkway around the edge of the room with glass to give us a proper second floor. Then it was time to enchant and put these 47 levels of mine to use. Getting Unbreaking 3 on a diamond axe I'd made, Unbreaking 3 efficiency 4 and fortune 2 on our diamond pickaxe, Unbreaking 3 on a diamond shovel I'd made, then protection 4 and Unbreaking 3 on the helmet, Unbreaking 3 on the chest plate, and Unbreaking 3 and protection 4 on the boots. The iron armour was swapped out for the newly created and enchanted diamond armour, making me feel a lot safer moving forward in this world. Then it was back to work at the staircase. Now we'd gotten the diversion out of the way and come back a stronger man. If you're wondering why I'm using an iron pickaxe here, it's because now that we've upgraded to a diamond one, I didn't need to hold on to the one of the iron, so I was just using up its durability. Before moving on to the big guns, our newly acquired diamond pickaxe that cut through blocks like butter. After having broken hundreds of stone pickaxes, this felt almost too powerful to be in my hands. I feel like I've met more wild silverfish in these 3 episodes than I've ever come across in my entire history of playing the game. I seem to have a knack for finding them. In the back of my mind, I can't say I didn't think about the diamond pick breaking, because as good as its durability was, even with Unbreaking 3, I knew it wouldn't be enough to remove all the blocks I wanted to remove, and without the mending enchant and a reliable way to get XP, I knew I'd have to make another one. So it's fortunate we had the diamonds for it, plus as another little bonus we were grabbing a lot of the cobbled deep slate, helpful for when we need to use them for builds. Not that it has anything to do with making another diamond pickaxe. Plus we were finding more ores along the way, like for instance these diamonds I'd found. The 6 I found here was enough for another diamond pickaxe plus 3 left over as profit. Our diamond pick had now paid for itself. After the blocks had been removed, here's what the staircase looked like. My first thought, it might need to be a little bit wider. So when I got to the entranceway, I turned back around and began working on the width expansion. 2 blocks of extra width space at either side was what I was aiming for. I'd review after to see if it's to my liking. However, I didn't like how one of the corridors of the staircase, the section that went over the ancient city, had a small 2-block high staircase in the middle. I wanted to flatten it to the same level, and in true distracted fashion went to work on it. I needed to take care where I stood, because I could easily drop through to the city below. With my new armour, I doubt the fall would kill me, but it'd hurt. But then I got distracted from the distraction going back to the staircase widening. I could tackle the floor once this was done. By the time I'd gotten to the bottom, I could see it was going to be a good width. The ceiling height would need heightening some more, but the overall width was good. So I went back to the corridor flooring, trying to make it one uniform level, with the ancient city below no longer looking anywhere near as menacing as it once did. I was confident I was going to be putting in a custom flooring, but not yet knowing what future me was going to decide on, opted for a temporary cobblestone one. With the floor now in place, I could heighten the ceiling of the expanded section to the same height as the rest of the staircase, but I couldn't complete it before my pickaxe's durability got to 1 hit point left, and rather than let it break, I thought I'd hold on to it in case we could combine it with another at some point to create an efficiency 5 pick. Fortunately, we were at level 30, so could just about scrape into the high-end level enchants, getting fortune 3 and efficiency 4, and with some of our iron, made an anvil, combining this pick with the last to get a fortune 3 unbreaking 3 efficiency 5 pickaxe. All it needed was mending and it'd be perfect. However, it did put us all the way back down to level 4, so I wouldn't be getting any high level enchants from the enchanting table anytime soon. I was hoping this pick would have enough durability to finish the project, although past experience has taught me to paradoxically expect what I expected not to happen. At one part of the staircase there was a lot of spider sounds, making me think there was a mine shaft nearby with most likely likely a cave spider spawner. Unlocking a core memory of my early days, first playing the game off camera and being completely messed up by them. I'd love to go back in time and be a fly on the wall to watch myself play the game again for the first time, and how differently I did things, because I know there's so many things I do now that I didn't know until a year or two after playing the game. Although these guys were still a bit of a mystery to me in a lot of ways, I don't ever have a reason to interact with them other than to destroy their spawner in the stronghold when I get to the portal room. More diamonds to pay for another pickaxe if necessary, still hoping it wouldn't be. And it wasn't, with the staircase now at the size I wanted, nice tall ceilings with a proportional amount of width to match. I was happy. But the more I looked, the less happy I became with the height of the staircase, so I was back to doing something about it. And it was at this point my expectations of my pick's durability being enough had gone out of the window. It was only a couple of blocks of extra height, but it was 22 blocks worth at every Y level, from around Y equals 100 to Y equals minus 59. Only like 3,500 blocks. In the process, I'd uncovered parts of a cave above, so sometimes mobs would drop through the roof to the staircase and come for me. And it would happen pretty regularly if I was in that section of the staircase. Needless to say, the durability of my pickaxe didn't last, and with not having enough levels to get good enchants, took myself into the cave network around the ancient city to break skulk with one of the many diamond hoes we'd looted, as this was currently my best option of getting decent quantities of XP without having to build a dedicated XP farm. And I'd sometimes get lucky and uncover a vein of diamonds. I went as far as get to level 33 in case the first roll of the enchanted dice was subpar and we needed a re-roll, which I did, getting only Fortune 3 when I was really hoping for Unbreaking 3. So the enchants were removed with the grindstone. It was the right decision because we got Fortune 2, Efficiency 4 and the Unbreaking 3 I'd wanted. Surely this would be enough to see us through to the end of the staircase, even if I was deciding to raise the height of the ceiling again and not yet finishing the previous height expansion. Visually it might be hard to tell a difference, but playing the game I could feel the difference, and the difference felt good. I think it's the biggest staircase I'd ever built to the bottom of the world. And so what did I do next? Widen the staircase some more. Reason, because I wanted to put out one uniform block for the walls, and if I put it over the walls in place already, I'd be diminishing the width of the staircase from 11 blocks down to 9. So I needed to take out a block's width on either side to then replace it with a block of my choice to keep the overall width to the 11 blocks I wanted. No surprise the overflow storage in the attic was being put to good use. With the durability of my pickaxe looking like it wasn't going to last for the amount of block removing still left to go, I was back at the ancient city insta-breaking skulk blocks for XP. Crazy to see how safe this place had become within a single episode. I went back to block removing knowing I now had the levels spare to spend on enchanting another pickaxe. Good thing too, because I ended up having to craft another diamond pick, which was no sweat because we had plenty of diamonds to spare, and enchanted it receiving Silk Touch and Efficiency 4, which while it didn't have Unbreaking 3, I let it slide for the sake of Silk Touch. What I wasn't going to let slide were the mobs coming for me from the cave above, each one of them reaching their demise. In the hopes of preventing mobs from dropping down again, specifically creepers I was surprised I hadn't had any run-ins with, placed torches around the part of the cave closest to the gap in the ceiling of the staircase. I also took the time to light any of the bordering noodle caves uncovered from removing the walls of the staircase. With that taken care of, I could get back to work removing the walls. I'd kept the Silk Touch enchants in the hope that I'd be able to combine it with another pick at some point to get an Efficiency 5 Unbreaking 3 Silk Touch pick. That was the plan for when the opportunity arose, and of course at an even later date, Mending 2. When I went back to drop off resources in storage, I made another pickaxe for when the one I was using came to the end of his life. This one only have an Efficiency 4. I put it straight to use, only using the Silk Touch pick to pick up the ore blocks I'd be able to fortune at a later date. While I'd been mining out the underground staircase, I'd had cobblestone cooking in the furnaces, turning them into stone brick stairs via the stone cutter. No prizes for guessing what I was going to be doing with these. However, it was apparent I was going to need to remove some of the torches in the way, which would plunge the place into darkness and wouldn't take long for chaos to unfold. So I had to stop to ensure torches were positioned along the walls. I should have kept in mind the Hardcore 101 guide, always watch where you're going. My prediction from earlier was right, the fall wouldn't kill us, but I did roll my ankle, which was painful as fuck. Not an excuse to get out of stair placing, even if I had to limp I'd get them in. While the bulk of the staircase was made up of stone brick stairs, I did want to get some deep slate brick stairs involved too. I put these on the outer side of the staircase, and voila! That was the stair blocks put in. It would never take half an hour to get to the surface ever again. And to prove it, and and also to show off the entirety of the work done so far, here's me running from the very bottom of the staircase all the way to the tippy top for you to fully appreciate what I've done. Actually, that's false. It's actually just for my own appreciation, so I can see what I've done, even though I know what I've done. But it's nice to look back on and be like, ooh, yeah, I did that. That was me. It wasn't over yet. Yes, the size was the part, but it didn't look the part, and I felt one of the main blocks for the build should be birch wood. Shout out to my birch friends who don't throw up at the sight of it. I started with the ceiling, but because I'd done it so high, to place any of the planks I needed to jump, and from our little maths session earlier, that meant doing it thousands of times. My calves were going to be the size of Ronnie Coleman's arms by the time this was done. However, a couple of stacks of birch logs, which is all I had to my name, would only go so far. So I was out on the open road on a birch search. A nice little bonus being some ore blocks I came across, and I said to myself, and this is 100% a true story, this is what I said. I said, I don't mind if I do, and so I did. A little bit further on, at the nearby flower fields biome we found at the start of last episode were some birch trees, but they were sporadically spread out in amongst oak trees, so the birch density was a little lackluster. Still, it meant I had to traverse more of the biome to get to each one, and that meant coming across a few friendly faces I butchered for food. It's great we now had a greenhouse for unlimited food, but in the world of Minecraft, meat was better than bread for hunger saturation, so picking up a little something in the outdoor deli counter was always sought after. Still having my silk touch pick on me, I was making it a point to pick up beehives for when we wanted to get into the wonderful world of beekeeping, which meant my inventory filled up real quick and we headed home with nowhere near the amount of birch needed for the staircase. I might have to put a little walkway in for getting off of and onto our mountain. I was always falling through the snow, and every time it was marginally more annoying than the previous, and call me a snob, but there's no way I was wearing leather armour. Back in the staircase, our recently gathered birch wood was put to use. It wasn't going to be enough, but it'd do a good portion of it. Also, I was going to be using the birch for the walls as well as the ceiling, which included taking out a strip of blocks on the sides of the corridors to get birch planks placed. Although if you look closely, my clumsy hand pressed Q and threw my pickaxe down into the ancient city below, so I had to jump down after it so I wouldn't lose it, this time breaking my already rolled ankle. I was right, the birch we had wasn't enough. Still, it was a percentage of progress, probably in the double figures, towards our finished goal. Once again, that meant heading out for another birch search, this time hoping for a birch forest, with the occasional little distraction thrown in. I didn't find one, but I did find a forest biome, which, similar to the flower fields biome, had a mixture of oak and birch, obviously our focus being on the birch. And don't be surprised, I did kill the local animals. In fact, whenever I go exploring, you should assume I'm always doing this in some capacity. Back at the staircase, once again we got to work birch placing, and it was enough to finish the walls of the staircase, but I was still a little unsure if we had enough to finish the ceiling, and it almost was. It was only the final section of the staircase I ran out of planks for. A couple more stacks would have seen it all placed, so for the final time this episode I was out chopping birch trees, not needing to get much more of the stuff for that little section left. But of course, what did I do? Stay out and get way more than necessary in case I needed more for something else I hadn't yet accounted for. Back at the bottom of the world staircase, I got the final planks put into place. It was only a single block, but the birch had transformed the visuals of the place and was starting to feel like it belonged in the world. The ceilings and walls might have been transformed, but the flooring still needed work. Don't get me wrong, the actual staircase, part of the staircase if you know what I mean, was fine with the stone bricks and deep slate tile stairs. The flat corridor sections between the staired sections, however, were still a mixed match of natural blocks plus cobblestone. They were taken out and replaced with stone bricks to fit the theme, and I think it fit it well, but the staircase was still missing something, so I experimented with deep slate tile centralised pillars and quickly decided against them. So instead I moved them to the walls to see how they'd look, and with a world of pure imagination, the potential could be glimpsed. The green go-ahead light within my head was lit. Pillars were getting placed in between each torch, which ended up making the pillars 5 blocks away from each other. For the pillars to look right at the bottom, I needed to take out the stair blocks they connected onto each time and replace it with deep slate tile blocks. However, my pickaxe was close to dying at this point, and taking out the base block for all of those pillars had taken its toll. Still, at least I got an Unbreaking 3 enchant this time. While back at the house, I cut a load more deep slate. With all of the deep slate we'd removed during the project, I needn't be concerned with running out of the stuff. To say the pillars were only single block columns, they looked good and visually added a lot to the walls. I felt the birch just by itself looked better. As something experimental to try, I put in slabs along the edge of the ceiling to kind of join the pillars together. I hadn't been sure on them whilst placing, but I thought I'd give them a try. If I didn't like it, I'd have to turn around and take them out. I think it was because you could see the birch wood between the slabs. On the corridor sections, because it was one uniform height, the slabs between the pillars felt a lot more seamless in the connection. At one point I put slabs along the bottom too to see how I felt about them, but that felt like a step too far for me, so I stuck with slabs only at the top, and looking at them all in place afterwards, I'd say I liked them more than I disliked them. Next, tackled the torch issue. Obviously they were needed so the staircase wouldn't be plunged into pitch darkness, but I didn't want them to be on show. Having them recessed into the walls helped because I knew the quick fix: place a slab over the top, hiding them from sight, adding a marginal amount of detail to the wall and still allowing light to shine through. However, I wanted to make a little more effort, not much, but enough that someone, maybe one of you guys, would be like, there's been a slight bit of thought put into the light sources of this staircase. I don't always point out when I find diamonds, but this is one of those instances I did. Yeah, just a few cheeky ones. Recesses in, I went back to recess the recesses for the torch placement. Recessception, as some would say, or maybe even reception. Ooh. I also went back to the pillars to replace a couple of the tile blocks in each one with a couple of chiseled deep slate. The difference was almost non-existent, and when you're walking up and down the staircase, they won't even be noticed, but even if it was subtle, I'd go as far as to say this was my first step into the world of texturing. And by step I mean inch my toe over the line. Now, in the recesses I added deep slate tile stairs as a way to round off the sharp corners. I'd incorporated stairs into my previous two builds, and they worked well, so I was doing it again. I just wish you could rotate stairs onto the sides. This is what they looked like after they were fitted. They weren't bad, but I felt like they weren't quite right. And while I thought about what to do, lit another section of the mountain, expanding my district of high altitude prosperity a little further. My idea, originally walls and slabs, and the recess looked a lot better. But I also tried out fences instead of walls to see how it looked in comparison. And the fences won. The walls just seemed too chunky to me. I went with spruce fences as I felt it went well with the deep slate and birch, but didn't overpower their contrasted colours. Just added to it in a muted sort of way. Working in the area, I'd grown to feel the pillars looked a little spindly. I added deep slate tile walls to one of them to see how it looked. And although I don't show them well here, they did in fact look better. That now meant every pillar needed walls added so they'd all match. The lanterns I'd taken from the ancient city went up onto the ceiling of the staircase more as a decorative feature than for its light source. The coldness of the blue fit the general vibe. By this point the place was almost finished. There was one more thing left to do: get the birch trapdoors into place to hide the torches. And with them placed, the staircase was finished, and so you can see the whole thing. Here's me running from the very bottom of the staircase all the way to the top, and I'm not going to speed it up or slow it down either. Back home, I combined some of the diamond hoes found in the ancient city to get an Unbreaking 3 Efficiency 5 hoe, and then that one with a Silk Touch and Mending hoe to get a fully enchanted diamond hoe with Silk Touch, Efficiency 5, Unbreaking 3 and Mending. And that reminded me we had the greenhouse with crops galore, and once again I was using a hoe despite it not having Fortune 3, so it was pretty redundant to use. However, most of the crops had maxed out the storage, so the overflow was hitting the auto composter more regularly. We were going to be getting loads of bone meal. And that's going to be it for this episode. As always, a big thanks to my members. You make this content possible, and for anyone who's made it this far into the video, thanks for watching. Alright, bye. And a lot of mobs who were probably used to living in the complete abyss of the bottom of the world and hated a main character such as myself muscling his way into their abode and searing their code eyes out of their sockets with the first bit of light they'd probably seen in a long time. At one point they almost succeeded in eliminating me. It was only by pure unfiltered skill and a raw passion for life that I survived the ordeal and came away a stronger individual from the experience. Although how can you come